Hi, right, so here's the replacement sink that you sent me. Thank you very much for sending it, I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, it has got exactly the same problem as the initial one you sent me. Pretty sure, well, it's exactly the same. All of your sinks that you've got are these are faulty, they've got a manufacturing issue. And I'm just gonna show you on this video. Right, so I've got another new plug, slotted one this time, because currently I've got a non-slotted one because that's in my other sink. So that's the only way I can get it to seal. I'm going to show you me fitting it. So you can see, hopefully, I've not cross-threaded it, which is what one of your colleagues said I'd probably done previously. Right, what I am going to do is I'm going to remove the rubber seal on the bottom, because obviously it's going to be a lot easier to see without the rubber seal on. Okay, I would understand that if I was actually fitting it in real life, that rubber seal would need to be on. Top seal's still there. So I'm going to drop that in there like that. That sits nicely. Okay, the lip is even all the way around it. Just naturally, if it's sitting in with gravity, that sits as it wants to be, which is good. So no alarm bells ringing so far. Okay, under here, let's fit the nut. Okay, so yeah, definitely not cross-threaded, or I won't be able to spin it on with my hand like this. Okay, and what I'm actually doing, I'm still pushing down on the plug to try and keep it vertical. And I don't know if you can see, but as this is coming up, let's try and get the camera to focus in there. There's a gap here, and now that's getting tight by hand because it's touching the mating surface of the sink at the back. So I'm going to tighten that as hard as I can just by hand. Okay, if actually you get a tool on it, it makes the thing even worse. But even just tightening it by hand is enough to show you the issues. Okay, so I'll just get this out of the tripod. Right, focus is a tough one. So you can see there's a gap all the way around there, can't you, on both sides? Okay, if I come to the back of the sink, there isn't a gap, and the nut is clearly touching. Could do with a bit of foam, really. That is touching. So as I move around, see the gap appearing there? Can you keep that focus? There we go. I've got a shaky hand as well. Okay, so that's touching. And then, but it's literally, the only bit that's touching of the nut is there, and that's exactly like the previous sink was. If I come under the chair legs here, it's tricky because they're in the way. Look at that, I mean, you can see that a mile off. So what's happening, that nut in my picture there is only touching on the left side, which is the rear of the sink. Okay, so it's there. So what's happening, the only part of the plug hole that's getting pulled down is at the back. So that plug hole is effectively getting pulled away from me, because hopefully you can understand, that's pulling from the back, so the whole plug hole shifting that way, which is drawing this back surface down into the sink, and then, but this surface is actually getting pushed out of the sink. So that ridge, that lip, is getting bigger than before I even tightened it in. The way I got around that previously, and after taking about 2.5 hours and wasting half my day, which is quite frustrating, is I put some spacers. I think I ended up using 2mm, little window packers, under here, between here, so that it would have even pressure on both sides of the plug and it would pull in it evenly. Worked nicely, and it did pull this in. I mean, you can see, can you see? you can hopefully see the shiny edge of that lip that's protruding, which you couldn't see from the other side. Right, so I used those spacers. It pulled this in perfectly nicely. It was all good. Ran the taps, sealed like a beauty with the plug closed. The problem you've got is, because it's a slotted plug hole, to allow this waste goes into the back of the sink and then it's got to join in through the slot of the plug hole. Because it's got a slot in it down there, as soon as you let water out of the sink, it goes through the slot and it needs to be sealed at the bottom to stop any water getting into the sink, or if any water goes over the overflow. There is absolutely no way with that rubber seal, and I tried all sorts. There is no way that you can get that to seal. So what I did is I just got a non-slotted plug hole. I used my spacers because it didn't have a slot in. It held the water in, no problem, because I'd used my spacers. Let the water out. Okay, it all went down the waste nicely, not a problem. The only thing is, if any water goes over the waste, it floods my sink, and it floods my unit. It was $379 for this sink and this unit, and I've basically got one that it's a flood risk in the house. If someone forgets and leaves the tap on, got kids in the house, it's going to cause a flood. Okay, so it's not a great situation.